Good morning, everyone. I would like to start with thanking our founder president of Amity Education Group, Honorable Dr. Ashok Kumar Chauhan, Sir, Chancellor of Amity Education Group, Honorable Dr. Atul Chauhan, Sir, Vice Chancellor of Amity University, Patna, respected Vivekanand Pandey, Sir, Dr. Sushil Kumar, Head of the Department and Examination Controller, Deputy Registrar, Dr. Siddharth Shankar, Sir, Assistant Director, Amity Institute of English Studies and Research, Dr. Nutan Kumari, Program Leader, Dr. Rahul Sharma, Professor Arundhati Sharma, Dr. Shweta Chandra, Professor Roli Mishra, Dr. Shwet Nisha, and Dr. Sudipto Chaudhary. It's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest speaker for today's event. As an English subject teacher, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Rajesh Kumar Sharma, Professor, Department of English, Punjab University, Patiala, to our university to share his expertise and insights on this subject. Dr. Sharma has an impressive background of 37 years of experience in the field of English literature and language. He has published several papers and books on various topics in the field of English language and literature, expertise in literary and cultural theory, criticism, creative writing, film studies, classical Indian literary theory, and aesthetics, and as well as transitional studies. Dr. Sharma happens to be an essayist, critic, and translator, and has even published 7 books, and the latest being Posh and Bill, Critical Essays and Poems in Translation 2023. And in additional roles, if I may keep on reading, it will take the entire day, I believe. However, in additional roles, Dr. Sharma has been the part of committee member of Vishwabharati University, Shantiniketan, West Bengal, visiting fellow of Jamia Millia Islamia University, New Delhi, Senate and syndicate member of Punjab University, Patiala, Dean Faculty of Languages, IK Gujral Punjab Technical University, Main Campus, Jalandhar, member of Local Planning and Management Committee, Human Resource Development Center, Center of Allahabad, member of IQAC, Punjab University, Associate of Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla. These credentials will suffice as mammoth stature. He's been invited for special lectures is 39 in numbers. Conferences and seminars and webinars is 17. He has actually supervised 9 PhD dissertations. And currently he's supervising 9 as well. MPhil dissertations have been supervised 32 to be precise. And so far Dr. Sharma has published 90 publications across all diaspora as well as literary studies. Book reviews is under essays of 42, courses of study design is 9. So I believe, Dr. Sharma, this is something which we will dream of achieving anytime soon. So despite your security reasons back there in your province, because of the certain political issues, you have actually brought up time for us for this guest lecture. I'm really thrilled and I'm really delighted to have you here. So we are fortunate to have Dr. Sharma to share his knowledge and expertise today. And we will certainly greatly benefit out of this lecture. So without doing any further ado, so please join in welcoming Dr. Sharma. Dr. Sharma, I welcome you to Amity University, Patna. It's all yours. So.
Thank you, Dr. Abhijit Ghosh. I feel honored and privileged to be interacting with the faculty and the officials and students of this university. When we talked, Dr. Ghosh, we thought of doing things that students might benefit from. See, a time comes in a person's life when you have to shed the burden of scholarship and return to your younger days as a teacher. So I guess I'll try to do that today. I hope my students, the students listening to me today will appreciate what we discuss, some absolutely basic things, but things that usually are ignored in the course of teaching and learning of any language, English being just one of them. The way we devised it was reading for writing for reading. The reason is that the thesis of this discussion is that reading and writing are not to be treated as two separate activities as they are in the pedagogical arrangements. When you read in order to write. And when you write, writing teaches you how to read. So this is the thesis around which today's talk will be built. Because I believe that reading as a mere reader is extremely easy in comparison to reading as a writer. And by a writer, I mean even as a promising or a potential writer. I would even say that you begin to read systematically, intelligently, after you begin to ask yourself a simple question: how would I write this if I were the writer of this paragraph, this sentence? And you know, one of the best exercises the students can be asked to undertake is deal with a sentence by a master writer, say a Dickens or a Kurt Vonnegut or a Virginia Woolf, and try to write it better. So, the talk today will be essentially around what we call literary kind of writing. Although a distinction is made between literature and writing, I believe there is something called literary writing also, because all writing cannot be treated as literature. It cannot be treated as literary. There is a kind of writing which is meant for communication purposes, which carries a certain load of information that has to be unloaded into the mind of the reader. But there is some other kind of writing as well, which I believe is called literary writing. And literary writing is not to be distinguished in terms of its beauty only. Its music, its imagery, the storyline. No. Just three things I would suggest that should be kept in mind when a young student comes to read writing as literature. One, literary writing is not merely an expression. It is wrong to say, as it is said to us from our early school days, that we should learn to express ourselves. You see, schools and the universities are not hospitals where we are seeking some kind of therapy. Writing of the kind we are looking at today is a way of thinking. It is a mode of thinking, of experiencing. You know, Norman Mailer is one of those great American writers who particularly pointed out the challenge that a writer faces when she sits down to write. You don't have something to express and then you sit down and express it. No. When you are writing, it is in the act of writing that certain kinds of thinking becomes possible. So I would say that writing is not telling my story as I feel I can tell it, but discovering my story in the moment of writing it. Writing about something is trying to understand the way it is in the act of writing about it. So I would say thinking happens at the tip of the pen, as Mailer says. Two, there are kinds of writing that have a function, right? Something that we teach students for the purposes of communication in diverse fields. That has its own usefulness. Literature also has a certain use, but it is a sublime kind of useless usefulness. I mean, literature cannot be as writing simply explained away in terms of certain functions. Why? Because literature extends the horizons of our sensibility. Not that literature is privileged. All great art does this. So, how do we argue that literature has a sublime kind of useless usefulness? Any work of literature, you may choose to call it a text, any work of literature is irreducible. It cannot be reduced to anything else. It cannot be paraphrased. It cannot be retold in other words. A really literary sentence cannot be rewritten in any other way. And for that reason, any work of literature is irreducible, as I said, plus it is irreproducible. It cannot be reproduced again. So it falls outside a certain circuit of reproduction. You can have a literary text made into a film by producing a script out of it, but you cannot have the same literary work reincarnated as that literary work. It will be a parasitic literary work. It might be paraliterary. It might be parallel. So that is what I would say. Before I talk to you about how to read, then move on to, how not to read, then move on to how to read, and then why write, and then how to write. At the end, if you wish, I can send you a list of books that the students might find useful. I find several of them useful. I recommend it to my students. These books are also on the reading list of the courses we give for creative writing in our university. Well, how not to read. Now you'll see that many of the practices that we have grown up as students and teachers following are practices that are hostile to the right approach to reading. For example, we should not read a literary work for the content it has. We should not read it for a meaning hidden in it, for the idea behind it. No. The work of literature must be approached in its organic unity, as it is. Number two, literature should not be read fast. You see, this goes against, again, the habits we have cultivated. How many books we can read in a year? Yes, your speed goes up the more you read. But then, as readers of literature, we need to cultivate slowness. so that we can dwell on a word, a phrase, a certain way of putting things. You know, Virginia Woolf famously rewrote her suicide note before killing herself because she felt that the suicide note had not been written as well as it should have been written. Now, what does it say? How finicky the writer gets. And this is not some eccentricity merely. This is a devotion to discovering what language reveals to you in the act of being cast while you write it. Then don't read derivatively. I mean, those books which abridge a longer work, which summarize a work, they are a simple no-no for a student of reading. And I'm not saying simply literary reading. You see, anything that is literary is irreducible. It cannot be reproduced. How can it be turned into something else for simpler, easier, quicker consumption by a reader who is too lazy and cowardly to plunge into a work that offers its own adventures in reading and its joys, and of course risks. You see, we don't go to a significant work of literature simply to see our opinions, our prejudices being and supported. We do this in order to be challenged. We do this in order to change. Then, when we read literature, we have to suspend our tendency for moral judgment. You see, writers like Dostoevsky will create great villains, but those villains are charming human beings. Orhan Pamuk, in his book on reading the novel, talks about the right way of reading fiction as reading in order to understand, not in order to judge. You see, we judge because we are afraid of trying to understand somebody or something, like a situation that is extremely complex. So what do? We simplify. But in the act of simplifying, we reduce. Then, when you come to literature, you need to put aside all the frames through which literature might be at any given moment of history read. Like reading a novel in terms of feminism, in terms of caste politics, in terms of, say, gender generally, in terms of history, like partition is quite popular, that is okay. But remember, those readings of literary works are reducing those literary works to resources for things other than the pure challenge and joy of reading literature. And the result is, when we bring a frame to read a literary work, we see only what the frame allows us to see, missing out so many things. This is one of the things that theoretical approaches to literature have done. They have produced a special kind of reading disability. There's so many things we don't see, because those things are not fashionable in theoretical, critical ways of dealing with literature. Then, don't read for the sake of some truth to be found. Don't read fiction as only fiction. Fiction is a way of better comprehending reality. It is not the antidote to reality. It is an immersion in reality at a microscopic level and at a telescopic level. Then, don't read literature as only artifice. Yeah, I could have said, don't read literature as an art. No, art is also an engagement with truth, and literature is an art. Fiction is one of those literary arts. And finally, and this is something we all, as students, and I am a student, as long as I'm learning something, I'm a student. Don't read literature as a task. Even if it is a task, persuade yourself to believe that literature is a matter of taste. And taste is not something always given. You might naturally feel inclined to like certain things, but then expand your taste, challenge your taste, discover other possibilities of taste. That is how we will further refine our sensibility as readers. Right? Then, when I say read slowly, we are now coming to how to read. I mean, read against the grain also. You know what is reading against the grain? If you meet a carpenter and ask him to come with you and buy timber for furniture, for the doors and windows of your house, he will go with you and he will touch wood, run his fingers on it, and he will tell you whether it should be bought or not. He will run his fingers up and down, sometimes the whole hand. Against the grain is the direction in which, when you move your hand, you feel a resistance by the wood. And your hand reads the texture of the wood and the fineness or otherwise of that texture. It is good to flow with the text when you read it, but it is better to resist flowing. How? Asking yourself what makes a certain part, let us say, a certain sentence, a group of sentences in a lovely work of literature. So lovely. You know, in ancient Indian philosophy emanating from Kashmir, you have this counsel that you study the object, you study the method in which the object has been made. And you study yourself as the subject, studying that object and that method. So when the three things meet, your study begins to be complete. What am I reading? That is what we normally address. How the thing has been made. Like, look, we all grew up reading some stories for children, Aesop's fables, Panchatantra stories. How does one telling of a story in writing or in reciting turn out? How sentences follow sentences? How words follow each other in a sentence? How the choices of words and phrases and sentences matter? How does a paragraph shift to another paragraph? How does the story come to an end? And why does it end the way it does? And why did it begin where it began? This is the method. Right? So, reading against the grain is the act of reading is not simply a consumption to give me pleasure. It is also a lesson in how that work has been made. It is letting the work teach me how to make that work if I am the potential maker of that work in future. So what it will teach me is the set of secrets that make that work unique, singular. If I understand that, gradually I begin to move towards making my own literature. doing my own writing, which becomes also irreducible and irreproducible. All right. Then those who read literature at a certain time come to read about negative capability. That's a concept that John Keats had given. Now, negative capability is for the writer an extremely powerful way of dealing with experiences which at a certain point, at a certain age, might be closed to me. You see, when we read with a negative capability, we read throwing down the resistances to the invitation of the work. Try to understand it in this way. Negative capability is a capability. It is not an inability. It is not a disability. It is a capability, what you can do. So negative capability in Keats is the capability to negate yourself. But not to become a cipher, no. It is to transcend yourself. It's like he says, you pick the grain with the sparrow. So with the sparrow, you become the sparrow. With the song, you become the song. Now, that is what we do as readers, ideally. But that is also what we do as writers. We have so many stories of great writers like Flaubert writing Madame Bovary. At one point, the heroine eats arsenic powder, and Flaubert writes in a letter, he says, I, for several days, had the taste of that poison in my mouth. When his heroine falls ill, he himself develops the physical symptoms of his heroine's illness. What is this? This is negative capability. This is from where the authenticity comes into a work. And this is where you discover something that you did not know. That is where you see writing, like reading, becomes an adventure into the unknown. And after all, why are we pulled by reading into reading more and more and more? Why is it that every time we complete something, a story, an essay, a book, is something else? Because it is an adventure into the unknown. That is what I meant when I said that a literary work expands the horizons of our sensibility. It doesn't simply renew us, it makes us subtler, vaster. Sometimes other than what we were, and sometimes it makes us many. Right? So it's like you read a Black woman's story and you experience what it means to be a Black woman in a particular place during a particular historical period, and you know that person's family so well that you ask yourself, do I know even my own family so well? Okay, so that is what it will do. Now, there's this great German writer, Elias Canetti, who gave a lovely idea about what literature does to us. Those of you who immerse themselves in reading literature will, I believe, endorse this. When I read this in one of his essays, I thought I had felt it, but I had never thought that it could be said so well. He said, in literature, we undergo metamorphosis. We become processes of change. We become others. We become more. We change. That is the reason, you see, you should read literature as a commitment to discovery of the unknown. This is what you see, specialization does not encourage. Specialization has its own function in certain ways. But for a reader as such, who is given to pure reading, or a writer who is given to writing, what is more important is the pursuit of reading something that doesn't fall into his scheme of things, of his list of reading. And you try to become an Ahar because you happen to be journeying into a territory you never thought existed. All right. So I'll invoke again another ancient Indian writer, poet and theoretician of literature, Rajshekhar. He belonged to the central India and lived sometime in 1000 AD, almost 1100 years ago or so. He makes a distinction between what we call the scientific disciplines, including the social sciences, that he calls Shastra, and Kavya, the literary, shall we say, disciplines? Yes, we can. Shastra refers to those disciplines or subjects that have settled truths, by and large settled truths. So like 2 + 2 is equal to 4. Right? So the kinds of things on which there is a general agreement until there is a major challenge and the very idea changes. Right? Like the earth is round or the earth is flat, that kind of change comes. Until then, it is Shastra. Kavya, which is not just poetry, but the poetic kind of writing, which is literary kind of writing. Kavya, he says, is avicharit ramaniya. That which lies beyond what we can easily, comfortably, habitually think. So literary writing, in this sense, includes even theoretical physics. It includes the kind of speculation you find Freud venturing into. Avicharit ramaniya, the only addition is ramaniya. It is wandering, but it is pleasantly wandering. If Shastra is more or less settled, literature is delightful because it is unsettled, unstable. It teases thought. It takes you into thinking, into feeling, into experiencing the sort of things that you haven't thought, experienced, felt so far. Hence, why do we write? Because we want to think beyond the point where we know we can go while thinking. How do I think a little more beyond what I think I can think? That is what literature is. That is why you see it is wrong to read literature as simply a way of writing that is beautiful. No, it can be terribly mysterious, terribly opaque. It can be extremely challenging. Now, coming to how to write. If you are familiar with the, shall I say, ways of writing, you would find some of these things you know already. If not, I'll be happy you have discovered something. One of the things, for example, that I have discovered is a truth in creative writing which nobody shared with me for years, which only some of the finest writers made me realize. And that is the unit of writing, rather we'll say the unit of language, is not a letter of the alphabet. It is not even a word. It is a sentence. Just think about it. A word doesn't do anything until and unless it finds a place in a sentence where it becomes an event. See, words and phrases are events that happen in the narrative that a sentence contains. Change the place of the word, change the word, and everything changes. That is the reason we say no word has any meaning. Because words happen. And where do they happen? They happen primarily in sentences. So, as writers, as readers, the thing you have to try to understand more and more subtly is how sentences are written. Then you will realize why Hemingway's style of writing is so powerful. The way he forges his sentences. Henry James, Dickens. Then, within this, for example, one of the things you would know, if you don't, please keep it in mind, that the most important place for a word in a sentence is the last. So the word that comes at the end of a sentence has the most important place in the most critical of readings of a sentence. The second one is the first. So the last place is the most important place in a sentence, and the first place is the second most important place. The rest depends upon how you speak it. But if you write it and somebody reads it,
Hello.
you do not know how it will be done. Then, train your ear to listen. And in order to train, listen to other languages, to a variety of sounds, to music. Ultimately, you will realize that the writing that strikes you the most and that stays with you is the writing that somehow sounds most musically to your inner ear. So what is the best way of reading? I said slowly, so add to that, whisper to yourself the text you are reading. And let your ear listen to what your mouth does. Then, a distinction is made in writing between showing and telling. That instead of simply telling so-and-so came into the room, say, how does he look? How does he step into the room? How does the room like? How does the door open? Who is sitting there? How is that person looked at? By the person waiting in the room. So show rather than tell. But this is not as simple as that. In certain cases, it is better to tell rather than show. It depends upon the speed. The speed, the tempo at which a story is told. The tempo at which an essay unfolds. A thought elaborates. Okay. Remember, good writing is a combination of song, story, and thought. Even great poetry is a song and story. But then it becomes profound and lasting in your memory if it has an element of thought also. And the thought that teases you to the edge of your habits of thinking. Okay, now in this, for the students of writing and reading, I would suggest that the best thing to do is the thing that is blossoming today. We say that we are living in the second golden age of the essay. You can see how many writers are coming to the essay, writing the essay. Annie Ernaux is primarily an essayist. Memo is a form of the essay. Because the essay has a certain freedom of form in which you can say what you want to say in your own voice without feeling any kind of inhibition. But you can also explore. The essay does not have any settled form. And yet the essay can contain political theory, history, biography, discussion about issues in algebra, And the essay is at the same time one of the most difficult, but remember, for the practitioner, one of the easiest things to do as an exercise in understanding what literature is, to practice the essay. You can write an essay of 100 words. You can write an essay of 1,000 words. You can write a diary, which is a series of essays. You can write a catalog, which will be an essay, but practice the essay and try to discover the essay. There's so much. Some of the finest essays you will find in New York, sometimes in Time magazine, New York Review of Books, Paris Review. Look at the great essays. Virginia Woolf has herself been acknowledged as one of the finest essays. So read the essay, write the essay. This will give you an additional benefit, I will say profit. And that profit will be, it will make you understand yourself better. It will make you feel happier with being who you are. It will make you discover how many mysteries you contain within yourself. And let me tell you, you will be a finer, happier person. And that is what I believe a young person should be. The essay is the space in which you talk to yourself, in which you talk in a way in which a reader can overhear us. But you do it in writing. So it's a pursuit of trying to understand the world and myself, the outward and the inward, in a sort of continual, happy conversation, which includes everything like friends are talking. And finally, experiment with writing, with the uses of words, and have courage. The most important thing for a reader and a writer to cultivate is courage. Go beyond what you comfortably can write. Try to read something against your comforting habits of interpretation. You will make discoveries. Now, I think I have said what I wanted to say. I had to be brief. I want any questions you have from you. And there's a list of books that I think Dr. Ghosh will advise me whether I can share it right now or I can click a picture and send it. For some reason, I could not type it out and I would have shared that presentation with you in PowerPoint, but I can send a picture. I have made a list of about 7-8 books, which I believe all young and old readers like me will find useful. I find some of these books extremely, extremely useful. So thank you very much. I look forward to any questions you have, any explanation you need, or any observations you have.
Dr. Sharma, thank you so much. I will certainly ensure that your books have been referred or recommended to our students. In the meantime, I completely understand your paucity of being, deprived of internet services down there in your province, and that's what that resulted in not production of PPTs as well as your internet services that has been restored. And probably as far as the internet services are concerned, I believe by tonight, 12-ish, they will restore it as far as the news are concerned.
Already this has been extended to tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, I see. Without internet, without internet, it's absolutely non-livable world. I completely understand. So I'll open the floor for any questions you might have. Students, anyone? Yes, Shalini, please.
Hello, sir. I'm Shalini Sachin. I have a question that before starting to read a text, how can we in that moment forget and look beyond the pre-existing notion and knowledge in our mind, especially today when we have every knowledge in our fingertips? On our fingertips.
I couldn't get the entire question clearly. Can somebody repeat, or you can repeat it, please? Speak
Sure.
straight into the mic and a bit louder.
When starting to read a text, how can we in that moment forget and look beyond all the pre-existing notion and knowledge in our mind? Especially today when the knowledge, every information is on our fingertips.
You see, this requires an act of will. There is this habit that you have to cultivate of questioning whatever you think you know. Maybe you will find, I really don't know what I think I know. Two, simply because there's a lot of information, we believe that we have a lot of knowledge. It's like things are stuffed into the minds, but then the human mind can contain, I think, millions of times more than the information that we already have. Right? See, it is a question of looking at yourself from a distance. You know, there is this practice that people do in Tantra and Buddhism. They will refer to themselves not as I, but by their name. Like I don't say I am reading, I'll say Rajesh is reading. So I begin to think of myself as sitting there doing something, and I watch myself. Sometimes you try to do this in the class. A teacher is teaching you, you are a listener, look at yourself as a listener. In a few days, you will begin to develop a distance between the person who is looking and the person who is the object of looking. So you will begin to become your own reader, your own critic, and your own teacher. And that is what you see as teachers we want. We want our students to teach themselves. The day when the students can teach themselves, then we are free, because they are free. Very fine question from you. Anything else you want to ask?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello. Yes, please.
So my question is, what are some strategies for effective reading and writing in a time-constrained work environment?
What kind of constraint do you mean? You mean that you have very limited time for reading?
Sorry, sir.
You mean that the reader has very limited time to read?
So, so as we are students, so so most of us are indulged in some coaching institution and all. So after indulging in so many activities, so my question is, sir.
I got to get it. Yes. You see, choose the best. Don't read trash. Although for a writer, reading trash is also important. Remember that life is very short, and within that short life, the time we have available is even shorter. I will read only the best of the books, and I don't have to race to complete a book. Like you see, sometimes what I do is I come into my study, pick up a book without any plan, and spend a day reading pages from that. What matters is not how much we read, what matters is how we read and how we absorb it. Secondly, there are things we begin to read, but we actually don't need to read them. Simply because I've started reading a book, I have no obligation to complete it. If I don't think that book is really giving me anything, I'm learning anything from it, there's any adventure in it, I will throw that book away. Why should I waste my time? So do that. Right? Because we develop a sense of guilt. Well, I started that book, I have completed it. If you can't complete it, don't do it. I remember once Dr. Manmohan Singh had said, he said, on my bedside, I have 5 books and all of them are open. I have finished not a single of them. But he is not guilty. He's the Prime Minister of India, and at least he's reading 10 minutes before going to bed. Within those 10 minutes, a wise reader will absorb more than another will do after reading 1,000 pages. So how we read is important, not how much. I hope it helps.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. That brings us to the end of this session. I hope,
Thank you.
I hope we have actually, on behalf of the Amity University Patna, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude for taking out your valuable time and share your expertise and experience with us. Your presence has made us this talk highly informative and insightful. Your talk on reading and writing has been enlightening, as well as has left a deep impact with our students. And your knowledge and experience in this field have helped us to gain a fresh perspective, to be precise, and a better understanding of the subject matter. I really, truly, and really appreciate your effort and dedication in preparing such a wonderful talk and within a very short span of time. Again, with your own set of restrictions and rules back there. And your willingness to share your knowledge with us, it is truly inspiring for us. Once again, I would like to express our gratitude on behalf of the entire Amity family, as well as Amity Institute of English Studies and Research. As a department, we hope to have the opportunity to work and collaborate with you again anytime in future. So with our best regards and best wishes from Amity Patna, as well as our Institute English Studies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You have
My thanks to everybody there.
thank
All
you.
the best. I've sent you a list of books for the students. Please share it with them. Thank you. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you. Hope to
It was very nice
host you
lecture.
sometime in Patna, in Patiala. And it's P and P, Patiala and Patna.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bye. Bye.
Very insightful lecture, as Dr. Ghosh has already mentioned. And in crisp,
hope so.
I guess, a lot of takeaways of the students. And when I read the topic, I felt that it might be something related to language, but it was a unique blend of language and literature both. This session, this lecture served to both the language development, like when you said that, yeah, it shouldn't be read literature shouldn't be read very fast, or literature shouldn't be read with the objective of completion of a task. So it was really very nice lecture. The takeaways for me as well were great. Thank you so much. In
Thank
future
you.
also, good,
Yeah.
great. Dr. Abhijit Ghosh, thanks for inviting sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.